The sun over Zibola Kingdom painted the rooftops with golden light as the palace drums echoed across the hills. Everyone in the city knew what that sound meant. It was the season of choosing. The royal family had announced the official search for a husband for their beloved daughter, Princess Emily. She was the flower of Zibola. Beautiful, wise, and bold. Many suitors had come to win her hand, but Emily had turned them all away, claiming none had the heart or mind to match hers. This time, the palace announced that the competition would be open to all, rich, poor, titled, or common. The princess would choose a husband from among whoever could win her heart. The entire kingdom buzzed with excitement. Among the sea of men lining up in their best clothes and bravest smiles was Obesai, a quiet young man dressed in a plain tunic and worn sandals. His presence in the crowd drew mocking laughter. "Did you lose your way to the bakery?" one nobleman jeered. "You think she'll even look at a broke carpenter's apprentice?" Obesai didn't answer. He simply smiled and walked on. He wasn't always poor. In fact, no one knew that Obesai was the sole heir to a powerful fortune far beyond Zibola's borders. But Obesai had rejected the empire his late father had built, walking away from business, titles, and political power to find his own truth. His heart longed for something real, someone who would love him for who he was, not what he owned. So, with no entourage and no gold chains, he came to the palace on foot. As tradition required, each suitor was to bring a gift for the princess, something that represented their worth. Some brought golden bracelets, others diamonds, imported wines, or fine horses. Obesai brought a small, carved wooden box. "What is that? A toy?" one of the guards mocked as Obesai stepped forward. But Princess Emily was intrigued. She watched from the high balcony with her mother, Queen Nelady. The queen wore layers of golden cloth, her head wrap styled like a crown of flames. She narrowed her eyes at the sight of Obesai. "Who is he?" she asked her attendant. "He's not on the list of noble sons." "No, Your Highness," the aide replied. "Just a common man." "Then why does he walk like he owns the ground?" Emily said nothing. But her eyes remained on him. Obesai bowed low before the queen and king. The ceremonial guard brought his offering forward. "It's just a wooden box," the announcer said, confused. Emily gestured for it to be opened. Inside was a single key, carved in bone and inlaid with ancient patterns from a kingdom long forgotten. The hall gasped. No one understood it. But Emily's eyes widened. She had seen symbols like that only once before, in the secret library of her ancestors. "A riddle?" she asked, standing up. "Or a message?" Obesai finally spoke. "A promise," he said simply. Queen Nelady frowned. "You insult this house with riddles instead of riches. Guards, escort him out." But Emily raised her hand. "Wait. I choose him to enter the next round." A chorus of shocked murmurs echoed around the hall. The next challenge was one of wisdom. In a test of riddles and moral questions, the suitors were gathered before the royal court. The palace scholars asked each man questions of justice, kindness, and loyalty. Many gave answers laced with cleverness or flattery. But Obesai's answers were different, humble, real, and full of thought. One riddle asked, "If you see a stranger stealing bread for his starving child, what do you do?" The nobles all answered with talks of justice and punishment. Obesai simply replied, "Feed them both, and fix the laws that let children starve." Princess Emily blinked. She'd never heard anyone speak like that, not in her palace, not in the courts, not in all her years of learning. That night, Queen Nelady summoned Emily to her chambers. "My daughter, I see the way you look at him," she said. "But this boy is nothing. He has no land, no army, no political alliance. You are not marrying for fairy tales, you are marrying for legacy." Emily, dressed in a royal indigo wrapper, looked her mother in the eyes. And what is a legacy built on, gold or truth? The queen turned away. You're a princess. Love is not your luxury. Days passed. Obesai advanced through each trial, strength, leadership, compassion. And still, the royal family resisted him. One evening, as the final challenge neared, the queen sent her personal guards to Obesai's camp. Leave this place, they warned. The royal line is not for you. Obesai looked at them calmly. I came with nothing but truth. I'll leave the same way if I must. But Princess Emily had overheard the threat. She waited for him by the garden path the next morning, hidden behind the thick banana leaves. Why don't you fight back? She asked when he came near. I am fighting, he said. But not with fists. She stared at him for a long time. Who are you, really? Obesai smiled but did not answer. The final trial was the Walk of Honor, a solo journey through the sacred forest of Eldoli, where the ancestors were said to test a person's spirit. Every suitor would be given a single question by the old woman who lived beneath the tree of judgment. Only those who answered truthfully from the heart would return. Obesai entered the forest last. The old woman sat by the tree with eyes white as bone. Speak, she rasped. What do you truly seek from love? Obesai knelt before her. A mirror, he said. One that shows me not my riches or charm, but my soul, and asked me to grow with hers. The forest wind shivered. The old woman nodded. You may pass. Obesai returned from the forest at dawn. Of the 20 suitors, only 4 had made it through. The royal court gathered for the final ceremony. Princess Emily stepped forward, holding a crown of woven gold. I will choose one, she said, to stand beside me, not as prince, but as partner. She paused. The air tightened. Obesai looked up. But before Emily could speak, her father, King Mosa, rose from his throne. This farce has gone on long enough, the king bellowed. You will not marry a pauper. He turned to the guards. Take him away. Suddenly, Obesai reached into his robe and pulled out the carved box again. He opened it. This time, inside was a second key, glowing faintly with light. The patterns on it began to shift, as if alive. Princess Emily gasped. That key, it's from the royal vault. The one sealed generations ago. The palace erupted in chaos. King Mosa stood frozen. Queen Nelady whispered, Who is this man? Obesai looked up, calm and steady. My name is Obesai Nwoko, son of the late High King of Nkolo. I left my throne to learn the heart of people. And now, I ask not for your crown, but for your daughter's hand. The sun had not yet risen fully when Kojo packed his small leather satchel, his heart still stung by the rejection he faced just days before. His hands, callous from work at the local mechanic shop, trembled as he zipped the worn bag shut. What hurt most was not the disdain in Zainab's father's voice, nor the cold dismissal by her uncles, it was Zainab's eyes, filled with silent sorrow. She hadn't said a word as he was dismissed. Her silence haunted him. But Kojo was not a man to fold into despair. Raised by a mother who turned scraps into meals and hardship into stories, he had learned long ago that pride meant little if one didn't back it with action. He traveled westward, toward the lands his father had spoken of in bedtime stories, a place once theirs, lost to time, politics, and shame. Kojo's late father, Kwaku, had once ruled a modest but rich palm oil territory deep in the coastal cliffs of southern Ghana. But betrayal from within the family had driven them out, leaving the land to rot and the family name to fade. Now, all Kojo had was an old iron key with a lion carved on its head, the last token of his family's inheritance. 2 weeks later, Kojo stood before a wall of jungle and salt breeze, staring at what once was the entrance to Kwaku's kingdom. The gate was rusted, nearly buried in moss, but when Kojo pressed the iron key into the center lock, something clicked. The gates groaned open, revealing ruins swallowed by nature, but also the bones of potential. Kojo wept. Not from sorrow, but from the fire awakening within him. The next morning, Kojo stood at the center of the once lost city, the sun rising behind him like a golden crown. Elders dressed in robes of cobalt and emerald emerged from the sacred houses, each wearing necklaces carved with symbols of great age. They bowed, not to his wealth, but to the bloodline he bore, the legacy he unknowingly carried. "You are the heir of Mansa Akamfra," an elder intoned. "The one who disappeared to protect us when the wars came. This city knew it would rise again through his child's child." Kojo was stunned. He had heard whispers of Mansa Akamfra in childhood tales, but he thought them myths. The people of the hidden city celebrated his return. The brass gates opened wider, revealing a market with spices that glittered like gemstones and fabrics woven with silver threads. Dancers performed in vibrant clothes as drums echoed through the valley. Yet through it all, Kojo thought only of Abina. Would she believe this truth? Meanwhile, in Abina's family compound, chaos had erupted. Her father, Chief Dopper, had sent his men to follow Kojo after their public humiliation. The scouts returned with stories too incredible to dismiss. "The boy has vanished into the cliffs. But there is talk of a city one no map knows. They say he's some kind of prince." Chief Dopper scoffed. "Fairy tales. There is no city in those rocks. He must be hiding his shame." But Abina was not so sure. Something in Kojo's eyes that day had felt final. That night, she escaped her guarded room, dressed plainly, and rode alone toward the mountains. The stars above seemed to pulse with urgency. As Abina entered the narrow path toward the cliffs, something extraordinary happened. The wind shifted, parting the leaves to reveal the stone archway Kojo had crossed. She dismounted and walked toward it, heart pounding. Inside the city, Kojo stood on the palace balcony, unaware that just beyond the gate, Abina stood with wide eyes and a trembling smile. They were about to be reunited, but not without trials. Because in a neighboring kingdom, news of the city's return was stirring greed in the hearts of men who once tried to erase it. And they were ready to try again. Abina entered the city just as the golden rays of dawn bathed the stone arches. The sight of her home, now alive with the sounds of history and tradition, stunned her. She had thought she was chasing a fool's dream. But here, amidst the powerful heritage of Kojo's ancestors, she realized that this was more than a tale. She made her way through the city, tracing the path Kojo must have taken. The heartbeats of the drums grew louder as she approached the palace, and her steps quickened. The guards, dressed in ancient armor, nodded to her with recognition. She didn't know whether they saw her as an outsider or a welcome guest, but it didn't matter. She was here to find him. As she reached the grand entrance, her mind raced. What would Kojo say? What could he possibly feel after what she and her family had put him through? The moment she stepped into the royal courtyard, the cool breeze whispered through the trees, and her heart skipped a beat. There, standing at the edge of the fountain, was Kojo. His clothing was no longer the tattered wear of a village boy, his attire was regal now, with intricate patterns symbolizing the strength of the lost city. His eyes, however, remained the same, the depth of them, still full of the same dreams he had shared with her. She felt a pang of guilt and admiration. Kojo turned as she approached, his face a mix of surprise and relief. There were no words at first, just the shared silence that spoke volumes. The past few days, the pain, the insults, and the humiliation faded away in the presence of something far greater than their past. "I never wanted any of this," Kojo said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, even resigned. "I never sought power. I only wanted to be seen as I am." Abina's voice trembled as she replied, "I've seen you. I've always seen you." They stood there, for what felt like hours, just looking at one another, caught between the weight of their history and the promise of what could come next. And in that moment, all the noise, the rumors, the judgment seemed distant. Here, in the center of a kingdom long forgotten, it was just them. But all was not peaceful in the kingdom. While the two lovers shared their moment of connection, an army from a neighboring kingdom had gathered. The news of the city's resurrection had spread quickly, and with it came the desire to claim it. Under the orders of King Kwaku, who had once sought to erase the hidden city from history, soldiers surrounded the gates of the palace. They were preparing for war. As the battle drums began to beat, Kojo and Abine knew they had little time. The fate of the kingdom, and their love, was about to be tested. The war drums echoed louder with each passing moment. Kojo and Abine stood at the palace balcony, their eyes fixed on the horizon where the enemy army was marching closer. The city that had once been hidden from the world now stood exposed, its secrets revealed, but at what cost? "We don't have much time," Kojo said, his voice filled with urgency. "They'll be here soon." Abine's eyes were wide with worry, but she also felt something else, determination. The city, the people, and their love were all worth protecting. She turned to Kojo and nodded. "We will fight," she said, her voice resolute. Kojo glanced at her, surprised. "You don't understand. They have thousands. We have only a few hundred." Abine stepped closer, her hand reaching out to his. "You might not want this battle, Kojo, but it's here. And this time, it's not just about us. It's about everyone here, everyone who's been forgotten and abandoned. It's about our ancestors, who sacrificed everything to keep this kingdom alive." Kojo's gaze softened. He knew the truth in her words. This wasn't just about him and her anymore. This was about protecting a legacy, a way of life that had been denied for so long. The palace gates creaked as the guards prepared to defend the kingdom, but Abine stopped them. She walked to the front, her posture strong and unwavering. "If we are to fight," she said to the assembly of elders and soldiers, "we must fight with purpose. We don't just protect land. We protect our spirit. Our unity." The soldiers and the people who had lived in the city for so long murmured in agreement. Abine's words lit a fire in their hearts. They may have been outnumbered, but they were not weak. They were the blood of warriors, of kings and queens who had once ruled this land with wisdom and strength. As the enemy forces approached, Kojo joined Abine at the front lines, standing side by side with the people of the city. His once simple attire now gleamed with the symbols of his ancestors, and his eyes burned with the same fire that had driven him to reclaim his birthright. The battle began just as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of red and orange. The clash of steel, the shouts of warriors, and the cries of battle filled the air. But amidst the chaos, Kojo and Abine moved together like a single force, determined to protect what they had fought so hard to rebuild. Kojo, once a humble village boy, now led his people like the ruler he was born to be. With every strike, he showed his strength and his resolve. Abine fought by his side, wielding her courage as her weapon, urging those around her to push forward, to not give up. As the day wore on, the enemy forces began to retreat. The people of the kingdom had held their ground, their strength proving greater than the numbers of those who sought to claim their land. And when the last enemy soldier fled, the battlefield fell silent, save for the cheers of victory from the warriors who had fought with everything they had. Kojo and Abine stood at the heart of the battlefield, breathless and bloodied but victorious. They had saved the kingdom, their love stronger than any obstacle. With the war behind them, they returned to the palace. The people hailed them as heroes. The lost city, now revealed to the world, would no longer be hidden. It would be a symbol of resilience, of love, and of respect. Kojo turned to Abina, a smile forming on his lips. You were right, he said softly. It wasn't just about us. It was about the legacy we carry, about what we stand for. Abina smiled back, her heart full. And now we have something even more precious, our future, together. As they stood hand in hand, looking out at the kingdom they had saved, they knew that the future held even greater challenges. But they were ready. For together, they had conquered the past, and together, they would face whatever came next. With the last enemy defeated, the once hidden kingdom was reborn, and its rulers, Kojo and Abina, would lead it into a new era. Their story became one of legend, not just a tale of love, but a story of strength, unity, and respect. And it would live on for generations, a reminder of the power of family, heritage, and the indomitable will to fight for what's right.